The Spirit will teach you all these things. So the being of the Holy Spirit, we usually call the Comforter, and people think that when you're in great suffering, Christ may send him the Comforter. Not necessarily just that, because he sent the tongues of flame at Pentecost and gave everyone, all his disciples, apostles, and the women that were there, who were actually their leaders, and John, Lazarus by then, gave them the ability to speak in a language of the Spirit that everyone understood in their own language. In other words, the Tower of Babel was negated. The Spirit language spoke through them, and that's the reason that they set the world on fire and converted the world, because the Spirit of Christ was working through them. So they can directly, when they were heard by other people, they said, "Oh, I can experience the Spirit of Christ speaking through you." The same is true for the spirit of Anthroposophia. So if you took the Mother Mary, who, according to Steiner, I'm not even going to get into it, it's too complicated, but it is in the book, really became one of the great beings. You can find many different ways to look at this, and there's an evolution that's going on also. So let's look at it this way. You have what we just talked about as thinking, feeling, and willing. Thinking in your head and your nerve system, feeling in your rhythmic heart system, so blood and lungs. And then the metabolic system in your is the lower part, and that's your willpower. Our willpower is mostly in chaos to us, and we don't control it. We don't control all of our, none of the autonomic nervous system, and only part of the sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. So we don't control most of the stuff going on in our body. So who does? Well, those are the rules that were laid down by the thrones and the beings of wisdom and the dunamis and now with the human, the Elohim. So we have these higher beings working through us at all times. So if we were to talk about Sophia, you would say Anthroposophia is in your head. She is the developing thinking, the intellect, intellectual clairvoyance. That's what Steiner calls it, that we're supposed to be developing, awake and going literally across the threshold to commune in the language of the Spirit with angels in your thinking. Okay? Well, that's just the guardian angel. But then you want to discuss what the real guardian angel is, and the guardian of the threshold, the lesser and the greater, and the three doubles, and then the American. Okay, it gets very complicated. So you have to keep it simple. Okay? So Sophia, Anthroposophia, Rudolf Steiner's Anthroposophy, is in your head. But what does it do? It starts a fire, and then your head turns on fire. Your hair turns on fire, and the angels start to flow through, and you go, "Oh, none of these are my thoughts, but they connected up all of my little thoughts so that they make sense. And by golly, that knowledge of all the effort I put forward was turned into a drop," he calls it, a drop of wisdom. One drop, you only get one drop at a time, probably. Certainly for me, one drop at a time. And that's enough to blow your mind, okay? And then you have the beings of wisdom. They're the ones who set the pace of the cosmos. They're the ones who set the pace of your heart that is in sync with the universe. They are the beings, Steiner, and they live in your heart, and they are called the Karyotetes. One could see them in your heart because they are connected to the archangels. And we can break this down so that what I just said about the head, I can give you 1,000 references for that to demonstrate that the angels are really working through your head and through Anthroposophia. Yes, they are. It is really true that the Karyotetes, the beings of wisdom, or what Steiner calls the heavenly Sophia, is working through your heart. And she's sitting right next to Christ on the throne of your heart. Okay? She's like the queen of your heart. And then there's one more stage. You go into your metabolic system. But by the way, can you get out of your head down to the rhythm? And can you go down into the metabolic? Not unless you're in trance. And when you do, you're scared to death because you're going to meet what Steiner calls the mothers, or he called them the three mothers, the great miracle. He says the great miracle is that the three mothers, miracle of transcendence, the three mothers become the mother. So you go down into the mother, right? And you have better worked out all the chakras down below your heart if you want to go down to the mother, because otherwise you're going to see your double, you're going to be scared to death. You will literally die from experiencing them, okay? Steiner describes this in great detail. So Anthroposophia in your head, the heavenly Sophia in your heart, and the mothers are in your will.
Yes, and that's just one way of looking at it. So this is very subtle, and as they say, the devil's in the details. Well, it's even more complicated when it comes to understanding some of this material. Is that, well, for example, another way of looking at it, okay, so you look at your head, and you have the brow chakra, and so you're related to the realm of the angels, and the angels dwell in your thinking, and then you get and you imbue that thinking with feeling, and that's the realm of the archangels, and so that gives you a, a hint as to how you can understand the tongues of flame, and so that they could speak, so that people that spoke other languages understood what they were saying, because it was imbued with that power of the logos, the second logos that works through the throat chakra. And then you go down to the realm of the archive, the 12-fold chakra of the heart. And so that's yet another way of approaching this. And so you could just keep going through levels upon levels, and come up with different ways of looking at this. And Rudolf Steiner is very clear. He says, well, there's a tree, and you're taking a picture over here, and now you go to the other side and you take a picture over there. The pictures may look different, but it's the same tree. See, so this is what we're doing here, except that you have to also add the added dimension of time. And so that, okay, yes, we're talking about the exousiae, okay, but they weren't exousiae during the time I'm making reference to. That was an earlier stage of their evolution. And so, but it is very, there's a simplicity within the complexity. But this gets to a point that's a lot of people wrestle with, because they like to think of themselves as monotheists. They believe in one God, and okay, that's fine, and we need that. And the masters of that is amongst the Semitic cultures, that they have this one God doctrine, but that doctrine, the shadow of that doctrine, is Ahrimanic. And likewise, you also have the other side of the coin, is the many divine beings. And when you look at that, and that would include the idea of the Trinitarian view, that without the Trinitarian view, you can't approach certain concepts. But the challenge of that view is Lucifer, whereas the challenge of monotheism is Ahriman. The challenge of polytheism is Lucifer. And this is something that's clarified in a book that isn't in print at the time, but East in the Light of the West. It's an early publication of Rudolf Steiner's that shows how in the times before Christ came to earth, that the thinking principle within the human being was something that was coming under the inspiration of these Luciferic beings. But that when we reached the mystery of Golgotha with the incarnation of Christ, that there was a shift that happened at that time. And so the Luciferic spirits that worked internally to inspire your thinking leading up to the mystery of Golgotha, after the mystery of Golgotha, the inward nature becomes this mystery of the Christ and the Sophia. See, so that now Christ has taken his place on the throne in your heart, and that now it's through the Sophia of Christ, the wisdom of Christ, that we come to understand these things. And as Christ said, I am the door. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And so it's challenging for some people, but as we move into the future, people of other faiths, when they come to have the supersensible experience, that's what they'll find there. They will find Christ, and they will find Sophia.
Great points you've made. We must remember that the mystery of Golgotha, the turning point of time, was at first a donation that Steiner calls the Mars first half of the Earth, and the second half is called the Mercury half. And in the Mars, the hierarchy is donated to us, and in the second half, the Mercury, we're supposed to awaken. We're supposed to say, thank you. You're doing this for me now. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to turn the heart from an autonomic nervous system, which it normally acts like, into a sympathetic or parasympathetic, where I can control my heart, I can control my kidneys, I can control the things that all the hierarchies do for me, from the thinking to your feeling and your rhythmic system into your metabolic system, which we hardly understand whatsoever. So when we talk about Sophia, if you don't have awe, reverence, wonder, awe, and reverence, then you're an idiot. You're really stupid.